A young couple had just purchased an old house. The husband planned to renovate the interior, but one swing of the hammer brought them a lifetime of terror.
Is there a hazmat suit anywhere around here?
Local police immediately arrived to investigate, but their police dog suddenly became anxious and agitated. It ran around frantically like a headless fly. The chief thought the dog had lost its edge, unable to locate where the body was. But the experienced Rossi said it wasn't that the dog couldn't find it. It was that there were too many bodies and it didn't know where to start. Sure enough, there wasn't just one body in the wall. There were bodies in the floor too. Every corner of the entire house had them. In the end, officers discovered 5 female remains throughout the house. Soon the FBI's analysis team got involved in the investigation. The local chief said this house was built in the 1960s. The previous owners were an elderly couple. The husband had passed away a few years ago. The wife suffered from Alzheimer's disease. She now lived in a nursing home. Based on the timeline of the case, the primary suspects had to be the previous homeowners. They had lived in this house for half a century. They barely interacted with the outside world. If one of them committed the crimes, the other couldn't possibly be unaware. Based on experience with similar cases in the past, when couples commit crimes together, the wife typically assists the husband. The key question was why the bodies were mummified after the killings. If it was just to interfere with the investigation, simply dumping the bodies in the nearby swamp would obviously be more convenient. Currently, the only person who might provide answers was the wife living in the nursing home. Reed and Lewis immediately went to the nursing home to visit her. The nursing staff warned that the woman was often disoriented and not to expect much. She completely ignored the visitors. She just kept her head down doing needlework, as if this was the only way she could escape reality. But she clearly had some awareness of what happened in the house. When she heard the word body, she accidentally pricked her finger, yet she remained silent. In the end, police found a total of 7 bodies. Because the crime scene was in a remote small town, the local police station had limited resources. They rarely even handled missing persons cases. Even the medical examiner didn't know how to handle such a situation. The analysis team had no choice but to request emergency support from the Forensic Research Institute. The forensic examiner determined these weren't mummies in the strict sense. The internal organs were all intact. They had just been wrapped and dehydrated. Based on the condition of the teeth, the deceased were likely drug addicts. These types of people were high-risk individuals. Few people cared about their whereabouts. They could go missing for decades without anyone knowing. But 2 of the bodies were clearly different from the other 5. They had died less than a year ago. This happened after the husband died and the woman moved into the nursing home. This meant that if the elderly couple were the killers, they had a successor. However, faced with this question, the woman still refused to respond. She just kept repeating, "What's the use? And it's completely different." What exactly was different? What was the relationship between the new killer and the elderly couple? After detailed examination, the medical examiner suggested the analysis team investigate these 2 types of cases separately, because besides the different times of the crimes, there were many other differences between the old and new remains. The 5 victims were all young women in their teens and 20s. There were no signs of sexual assault or abuse on their bodies. The cause of death was poisoning. The 2 bodies discovered later were both middle-aged women in their 40s. They had been abused before death. The fatal injuries came from blows to the head. What was outrageous was that these 2 were mummified while still alive. Overall, this new criminal was copying the former's methods. He was likely closely related to the homeowner's family, but he had his own needs and was even more brutal. Reed continued trying to communicate with the woman. When he asked again what she meant by different, the woman suddenly asked back, "Did I say that?" She seemed to have no memory of saying that at all, but after recalling it, she suddenly grabbed a fork and stabbed herself viciously in the carotid artery. The woman died on the way to the hospital. All the secrets she knew died with her. But why did she do this? Could it be out of intense guilt?